Fantastic. And of course, we're going to be talking you through our 2025 trend report today. Now, if you are a long-term client or even a new one who maybe joined one of our live onboardings, then you will be familiar with our methodology for spotting trends. So I won't dive into it in too much detail, but essentially it revolves around these three elements: basic human needs, macro trends, and innovations. We believe that when big shifts like an aging population, growing inequality, and so on brush up against basic human needs, it creates tension, and that tension is resolved by innovations, products, services, campaigns, business concepts that meet those human needs in new ways. Now, why am I reminding you of this? Because in 2025, we expect to see some big shifts at that macro trend level. So let's start by looking at a few of them. Firstly, of course, already we've talked about this AI and robotics. This is an image from BMW Group's factory in Spartanburg, Germany, where they are testing the efficacy of humanoid robots on its production line. And we expect to see a huge surge in agentic AI next year. So bots that can think, plan, and act on their own. Unlike chatbots, this tech could transform workflows across industries. We see early solutions like the coding agent Devin by Cognition AI. Here is their, human CEO. These tools already show potential. Obviously, reliability hiccups, adoption issues do need to be tackled. But with over $2 billion invested in the technology, agentic AI could be the power that really serves this new generation of solo entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. We see 25% of companies in the US that use generative AI will launch agentic AI pilots or proofs of concept next year. Which brings us very nicely onto the future of labor, which is, of course, being radically altered by automation and economic stability. It's giving employers the upper hand. So just 27% of consumers report being financially unscathed, and many are continuing to diversify their income streams. So that might look like reselling on Vinted, for instance, or freelancing on Fiverr. Now, rising youth unemployment and uncertainty around white-collar jobs is also going to turn the gig economy into a lifeline for the next generation. And this next generation is spawning new business models. And by next generation, I do, of course, mean Generation Alpha. These are the kids born between 2010 and 2025, and they're set to number almost 2 billion by 2025. As you can see here, the consultancy McCrindle predicts that by the end of the year, they will be the largest demographic in the world. Their generation are the most globally connected that we've ever had. They're navigating this era of rapid change. They're TikTok native, they're ChatGPT fluent. Maybe some of you are familiar with brain rot. This was actually just a couple of days ago announced as the Oxford Dictionary's word of the year. Will this language help them to navigate a pandemic scarred and climate stressed out world? Maybe, maybe not. But brands who engage meaningfully will understand the need to empower them amid this dystopian macro outlook. And I should say, if you weren't feeling old enough already reading, brain rot language, then Generation Beta is already on its way. And in fact, they're coming sooner than this meme would make out, the last ones being born less than a month from now. The first one, sorry, being born a month from now, but the last of Gen Z being born less than a month from now. Now, that is a lot of change, but what does it all mean for your brand specifically? Well, more disruption, of course, means more opportunities for innovation. And this isn't just some aphorism that we throw out to clients. This is something that we at TrendWatching embody in practice. So rather than just talk about the rollout of generative AI, we actually leapt at the opportunity to create some AI tools of our own. You might have seen these, our Trend Baby tools. These allow you to take one of our trends and see how it could be applied by your brand. So we've developed these tools. Some help you to develop product ideas or maybe shape a new campaign, perhaps to envision a potential future business scenario. And as you're scrolling through our 2025 report, you'll see that we've actually added 2 AI-generated innovation ideas per trend that have been made with our Trend Baby tools. But to complement the launch of this report, we've also launched 2 completely brand new tools. One that shows how each of the trends featured in the report could impact your industry, and another that shows how each of the trends might look in your particular region. Now, they are both structured very similarly, so I will just demonstrate one very quickly now. So from the Explore page, you see this when you log in, you navigate to the Trend Baby section, and then you'll select a tool, in this case, the industry application. You simply type in your company name. So we're going to go with the Dutch brand, Tony's Chocolonely. You add in the URL. You also, once you've done that, you add in the industry. You can also here add any additional information that might help tailor your response. So, we might say confectionery. And then you're going to select the audience that you're most interested in. So let's go for Gen Z, and we'll cover all genders. Pick the market that you're operating in, or that you're interested in, and then you hit generate. Now, it is important to note that none of your data or these ideas are stored by either ourselves or OpenAI. We've opted out of data sharing, so you can ideate without fear of IP infringement. But what you'll see is that within seconds, you will be presented with some customized reflections on the trends featured in our 2025 trend report that are each tailored to your brand and the industry sector at large. So this, and of course, the regional tool, which I highlighted just a moment ago, are really great ways to understand the relevance of our trends to your particular context or your particular market. So please do dive into into these tools after reading the report. It's a very helpful addition and a great way of extracting even more value from the report. But before you start playing with these tools, allow me rather to walk you through each of our 2025 trends. Now, there are 7 in total, which is too many to cover in great depth. So we're going to home in on 3, and then we're going to leap through those final 4 quite quickly so that we have time for a couple of questions at the end. If you do have questions as I'm running through, you can submit them using the Q&A feature, and Gemma will then select a handful to answer at the end. So let's get going onto the trends. First up, worth-wise. Now, this trend is all about rethinking how worth is generated and exchanged. So with economic turbulence set to continue for the foreseeable future, our shared definition of value is shifting. And we see this in Gen Z, who are becoming increasingly disillusioned with, traditional work. In response, forward-thinking brands are introducing new forms of value creation that reward consumers for their authentic participation and strategic engagement. And you can see from the trend timeline in the report, this approach to brand loyalty is the latest iteration of a trend that we first tracked in 2010 called Reward Inc. But why do we see Worthwise taking shape now? Well, there are 3 drivers that you can see in the report, or what we call why nows. Firstly, gaming platforms and social apps are changing how they reward attention. So we're seeing a boom in tap to earn games like Hamster Combat on Telegram, in which players simply have to tap the screen and they earn crypto rewards. Now, this has over 300 million players, and these types of games are starting to show up now on TikTok too. Of course, it's hard to say whether they will stick around, but it's clear that value creation is moving beyond traditional money, and it's creating some very interesting new possibilities. Then, of course, there are financial pressures. So with 30% of Gen Z and 32% of millennials feeling financially insecure, half are also living paycheck to paycheck. It's clear that traditional income sources simply are not cutting it for many. Almost half, so 45%, have picked up side hustles. And with AI potentially further disrupting the labor market, having multiple income streams feels more important than ever. And as a result of this, consumers are also being much more strategic about what they buy. So we see 57% are doing thorough research before making a purchase. And many are also thinking about factors like an item's future resale value or the availability of support after the sale. And we also see some brands shifting the focus to long-term value when they're selling or marketing. So Vestiaire Collective recently launched this cost per wear metric for luxury goods. Now, what does this trend look like in action? For each trend, you will see 6 examples. So there's 4 on this page, and then there's 2 on the following page. I'm going to spotlight just a couple of ways that we see brands creating these new value systems for hard-up consumers, such as On the House. Now, this is a credit card launched in September that allows content creators in the US to pay for goods and services by posting Instagram stories instead of spending cash. So businesses can partner with On the House to offer cardholders a selection of different services, products, or perks, all on the condition that those cardholders promote them via their social channels. Alternatively, in June, we saw IKEA launch the Co-worker game in Roblox. Now, this virtual game allowed players to experience working in a virtual IKEA universe. So they could help customers, they gain promotions, they could wander around and explore different departments. And ahead of the launch, fans over 18 and who were based in the UK could apply for one of the roles. There were 10 roles. And the real twist here is that those consumers who successfully got those roles actually earned UK living wage, so £13.50 an hour. And that is the London co-worker living wage at IKEA. And this was part of IKEA's Careers Done Different campaign, which aimed to target a new generation of co-workers. Now, as I said, there are plenty more examples to explore in the report from McDonald's and Alipay. You can see here, for example. But what kind of business opportunities does this trend present? Well, primarily, there's an opportunity here to rethink your brand's value exchange. So we saw with IKEA, they experimented with offering real wages for virtual work. Now, concepts like that might be early days, but they hint at a future where brands can build parallel economies that turn participation and loyalty into tradable assets. Or how about targeting different consumer segments and rewarding them in ways that actually make their lives better or easier? So On the House meets influencers on their level by acknowledging their social influence as a tradable currency. But there are plenty of other forms of capital, creative, intellectual, social, and so on, that could also be acknowledged or traded. Okay, on to trend number 2, sense-scaping. Now, this trend sits at the confluence of 2 macro trends, really: technological advances and the pursuit of wellness. We've seen technology drive the emergence of immersive, sensory-focused experiences that are really tailored to an individual's emotional cues and physical responses. But now we're seeing these experiences evolve. So participants are actually learning something about themselves in the process. Fundamentally, this is about bridging the gap between data and discovery. So creating sensorial experiences that do not simply monitor users' well-being, but actually turn those insights into pathways for deeper self-knowledge. Now, maybe you remember our sentient spaces trend from 2019, if you're a long-time member of our platform. Now, that was all about ambient technology, spaces that react to human presence. Well, now those spaces aren't just reacting and responding, but they're actually gleaning deeper insights about participants, information that they might not even be aware of. The 3 main forces driving this trend are: 1, neuroaesthetics. This is an emerging discipline in cognitive neuroscience that is concerned with understanding the biological bases of aesthetic experiences, and it's making tracks at the consumer level. So cultural encounters are being reframed as health interventions as neuroaesthetic research reveals the positive implications on a biological level. We see that art experiences can actually slow cognitive decline and reduce cortisol levels. We've seen in response to this, art prescriptions gain traction across the globe. So really signaling this shift from art as leisure to art as therapy. Those of you who are frequent gallery visitors will be fully aware of the surging popularity of interactive art exhibitions in recent years. And we've seen this with artists incorporating biofeedback, extended reality, and real-time responsive elements These types of technologies are enabling new forms of creative expression, and they're actually converting passive viewers into active participants. This is a work by Stefan and Nicolas Blie that was presented at the Venice Biennale this year. But this isn't just happening in galleries and museums and art fairs. Whether it's brain reading headphones or emotion tracking AI, we see non-invasive technologies are giving users greater insight into their internal states. Of course, much of this technology will be used to encourage people to live more efficient or streamlined lives. And in fact, Gartner actually predicts that 60% of IT workers will be using bidirectional brain-machine interfaces by 2030. However, many of these technologies will also be used to help people get to understand themselves better, primarily to turn abstract emotions or feelings into actionable insights. So let's take a little look at some examples of what this trend looks like in action. So at June 2024's Art Basel, Turkish Airlines launched an art project and campaign called Inner Portrait with the artist Refik Anadol. So the artist sent four people who had never traveled before abroad to new destinations, and they then used sensors to capture their raw emotional data in the form of their heart rate, skin conductance, and EEG output. So that's measuring the your brain waves. This information was then translated into virtual immersive experiences, which demonstrate the connection between travel and neuronal activity. So making for a really fascinating exploration of the value of travel. And then over in France, in Paris, we saw Nike create this Breath Lab. This was a digital in-store installation that invited visitors to step inside a kind of orb-like structure and engage in guided breathwork exercises. So as they breathed inside this structure, an AI model, which you can see here, processed breath-related data captured by this thermal camera, and it then adjusted the ambience accordingly. And this was part of a wider campaign launched by the brand to promote holistic fitness. Instax approached this trend from a different angle. So they used neuroscience to recreate lost digital memories, working with a doctor at the Princeton Neuroscience Institute. Their team reconstructed the memories of somebody based in Sydney. So they used MRI scans to map her brain activity as she visualized specific memories, and AI algorithms then generated accurate images based on her brain activity. And this activation was then accompanied by an exhibition of those images, which were apparently bizarrely accurate to her, the images that she had been picturing in her mind. Now, maybe those examples already have you thinking up ideas of your own. We think there's really great potential here for brands to visualize or externalize the psychological benefits of using their products or services or experiences. We saw that with Turkish Airlines. Or alternatively, can you help to highlight to consumers the times or moments when they might have a negative or adverse reaction to some external stimuli? And can you then, as a brand, help them to work through those issues or to unearth those issues? Of course, if you are going to jump on this trend, transparency is key. In our research, we found that over half of US consumers are actually uncomfortable with in-store tracking. That's at 55%. That rises to 68% for facial emotion monitoring. So as this sort of technology does go mainstream, privacy needs to remain front of mind, of course. Now, from clarity to glorious messiness, we clearly are big advocates of AI at Trend Watching, but we also like to say that for every trend is a counter trend, and Humanifesto is all about rejecting that onwards drive to AI optimization and leaning into life's imperfect moments. So as the line between the real and the AI generated blurs, celebrating the messy reality of being human is becoming an increasingly valuable way for brands to signal their authenticity. Why do we see this trend happening now? Well, it's safe to say that we are currently gripped in the AI paradox, by which I mean that big tech continues to promote AI's productivity capabilities, But I'm sure many of you on this call can agree, a lot of the time it's actually just contributing to workload right now. And we're seeing it amplify burnout. So 77% of consumers across the US, UK, Australia, and Canada say that AI has actually reduced productivity and increased their workload. And alongside this, we're seeing the emergence of silent firing. Maybe you're familiar with this, whereby employers quietly start replacing employees with AI, which is obviously yet another reason for workers to reject AI and this relentless drive to optimization. But the embrace of messiness is also a response to impossible standards that are being placed on young people. Outside of the workplace, 27% of US teens claim to be struggling with burnout. 51% feel pressure to present themselves in a certain way. We see the Ozempic effect, stalling diversity efforts. Meanwhile, AI beauty pageants, you can see here the winner of Miss AI, and digital companions are fueling unrealistic expectations around everything, not just personal image, but also relationships. Now, parallel to the rise of AI slop, and that is actually a technical term for low-grade AI content, by the way, we also see authenticity trending online again. So you might have noticed Gen Z on TikTok are practicing rejection therapy, where they deliberately seek out awkward encounters with strangers. And in this way, we see unfiltered authenticity become increasingly aspirational. And this is taking hold in different ways. So we see this in the form of campaigns, like this campaign by Selena Gomez's Rare Beauty brand. This is the brand's first global brand campaign, and it's far from perfect, but deliberately so. You know, we see young women laughing and connecting, yes, but also persevering through more difficult or uncomfortable, lonely moments. And of course, the overarching message behind this campaign is to embrace every side of you. But how can brands bring this to bricks and mortar? How can they bring this to their stores? Well, how about creating spaces that encourage emotional release? So prior to the opening of its New York store, the fashion brand Mista turned its space into a rage room. So they filled the space with disused corporate office furniture, and they invited consumers to come in and smash it all to smithereens. This was in July, but the activation actually lives on in the form of a rage wall where consumers can visit, write down their frustrations, personal or political, on post-it notes and slam them up on the wall. So creating this kind of collage of local concern. And we're seeing this in product design as well. So Nonna's Cam is an analog camera that has one kind of defining feature. You can see it here, a hyper-realistic finger that partially obscures the lens. Now, this camera was created as a personal project by the Surfers, who are a creative duo from Madrid, and it was inspired by the accidental mistakes of childhood photo albums. So a real homage to beautiful messiness and a real antidote to flawless selfies and photoshopped pictures. Now, the brands that successfully build on this trend won't revel in that messiness in order to enable bad consumer behavior, but rather to establish themselves as human, empathetic brands. When it comes to products, what might that look like? You know, perhaps it means creating products that are improved by their imperfections. Or when it comes to experiences, perhaps you'll take Mista's lead and reconsider the role of your bricks and mortar outposts in a digital age. Can your stores become spaces for emotional release? Okay, just a quick check-in to make sure that you're still with me. I realize I'm rattling through these trends, and we're going to take the next four actually slightly more quickly so that we have time for questions at the end. So trend four, mirror, mirror. Some of you might recognize this trend from our events in Amsterdam and Singapore only a few months ago. In essence, this trend stems from consumer anxiety about the future and considers how AI tech can help people to visualize tomorrow and therefore make better purchasing decisions. Various drivers here. Obviously, digital twins have been used by insurers and industrial giants for years. Now this tech is getting a consumer upgrade. So we've seen time and time again that consumers feel overwhelmed by the volume of purchasing decisions they have to make each day. We see, you know, at the same time, 80% of global citizens feel the world is moving too fast, and just 35% are optimistic about the year ahead. So we're fully aware, technology can amplify feelings of future anxiety. I mean, we've all been subject to doom scrolling from time and time again. But how about using this technology to give people greater confidence in the future? That's what this trend is really all about. Again, we see various brands moving on this trend. Here's just one example. The breast cancer charity Copperfield in the UK launched a campaign a few months ago, which aimed to quash the misconception that breast cancer only affects older women. So it used a filter to age a handful of young women between 21 and 24 who had been diagnosed with the illness with a view to driving checkups amongst Gen Z. Now, there are very many juicy ways that brands can pick up and run with this trend, and you can read all about them in the report. Ranging from daily lifestyle simulators that can illustrate the secondary impacts of particular lifestyle choices, whether that's helping you to plan for a retirement or to better understand your climate impact, to AI mirrors, kind of mirror bots that allow consumers to communicate and consult with an older version of themselves. As I say, plenty more to explore in the report, but we're going to take these last trends at pace. So the fifth trend here is serendipity seekers. I mean, when will consumers tire of surprises? We see the popularity of pop-up shops, mystery trips, blind boxes shows no signs of subsiding. And in fact, as AI gets better at making personalized suggestions, it's likely to fuel consumer appetite for the unknown. So this trend is all about encouraging moments of unpredictability in an age of algorithmic certainty. Now, why are consumers calling out for this? We have seen a growing reckoning with the cost of algorithmic convenience. Sure, you might get products, services, or suggestions delivered more efficiently, but there's also the risk of becoming trapped in an algorithmic feedback loop and just being fed more of the same. Or worse than that, maybe you've had this, your favorite underground or niche restaurant, bar, or shop, gets picked up by an algorithm and it becomes hideously overexposed overnight. We've actually seen various examples of consumers coming together to pollute the internet deliberately with fake reviews in order to save their favorite hangouts from becoming tourist hotspots. And then finally, there's, of course, the urge to connect in real life, which we're seeing with the kind of fade out of online dating apps and the rise of book, chess, running clubs, those IRL opportunities to connect and have serendipitous encounters. One example that I want to highlight from the report of a brand acting on this is from the Dutch beverage brand Heineken. They aimed to bring serendipity back into live music events by creating this boring mode phone app that silences everything but essential notifications so people can connect at events in real life. They also complemented this with a very interesting campaign. They used infrared technology to project a message urging people to live in the moment. This was projected onto stages and it could only be read through a camera lens. So only those people who were trying to document the event through their phones could see this message, which said, put down your phone and engage in person. So a really smart deterrent for people who are glued to their phones. Now, brands keen to work with this trend should consider how they might engineer unexpectedness into the consumer experience, whether that's rewarding consumers for shaking up their routine or rewarding them by promoting the tangential. Algorithms, of course, typically narrow choices. So the opportunity here is to differentiate by designing specifically for surprise. Onto our sixth trend, social fabrics. Now, social fabrics is all about forging social activity, so it touches upon similar themes to serendipity seekers. And I know this is very ironic of me to say on a video call with you all, but face-to-face interaction is, of course, in free fall. And it's not just happening in professional contexts like this. In the US, teens have cut in-person social time by almost a half since 2002. Meanwhile, we see 1.5 million young people have withdrawn from physical contact completely across Hong Kong, Japan, and South Korea, of course, the hikikomori phenomenon. Now, what's clear is that more connectivity means less connection. However, anxious consumers are now needing helpful nudges or stepping stones to help get them out into the real world again. And this trend is being propelled by a social deficit among Gen Z. We see nearly half of them feel more nervous talking to new people compared to 5 years ago. And that is also being reflected by an overall crisis in friendship. So people on average have fewer friends now than they did 2 decades ago. And having that inner circle of friends isn't just a nice to have, it doesn't just make you feel better. It actually provides a training ground for building social skills. One of the key observations that employers today share about Gen Z is their lack of social etiquette or workplace appropriateness. So, what are consumer brands doing about it? Riz is a dating app that uses AI to help socially anxious users navigate romantic interactions. So users embark on simulated dating scenarios with generated characters, chatting online to AI personas. They then get a feedback on their response, and their overall performance is given a Riz score. So the aim is, of course, to boost dating confidence through these kind of low pressure simulated environments. And a subscription to this platform costs users $20 per month. Now, you'll find plenty of suggestions in the report, of course, as to how your brand might take this initiative forward into 2025. For instance, in the past 2 years, we've tracked countless examples of conversational AI being used to communicate tenderness and softness, being empathetic. Studies actually show that more people prefer generated poetry over human written poetry, and actually increasingly trust AI to be more impartial than humans. So, one opportunity here is for brands to really harness AI to help users navigate those socially stressful situations. And as I say, there's plenty more opportunities for you to explore here. But finally, our last trend of today is loop life. Now, no guesses for picking what ranks as the top global risk in 2024. It's not a robot takeover. It is actually climate change. And this is the third consecutive year that has been the case. 63% of experts and 45% of the general public rank it in their top 5 concerns. But despite this ongoing eco-anxiety, a say-do gap remains. And Loop Life is all about showing how AI can help consumers to make good on their attention. So providing solutions that make circular living easier. After all, consumers have already seen how AI can make their lives easier, whether it's planning a trip or picking up a new language. Now that expectation is transferring to sustainable living. And of course, it would be completely remiss of me to not acknowledge AI's environmental impact. While the electricity demand from data centers is, of course, rising, according to the International Energy Association, it does still remain modest compared to other drivers like electric vehicles or air conditioning. Brands will, of course, need to be transparent about their AI footprint while rolling out solutions that can enable circular behaviors to stick at scale. One example of this trend in action comes from Faircado. Now, this is a browser plugin that helps people to find cheaper secondhand items online. So consumers can highlight a product they're interested in, and Faircado will use computer vision and machine learning to scan the image and find equivalent alternatives from over 50 secondhand shopping websites. So they've partnered with 50 platforms, one of which includes eBay, so some big hitters, and Faircado actually earns revenue through commissions and fees for redirecting traffic. And of course, this is just one of 6 applications that are highlighted in the report. Now, if you're looking to innovate here, a good place to start is by looking into how your brand might be contributing to green hindering. This is a term used to describe practices where sustainability efforts are unintentionally undermined. So things like having overly complicated recycling systems or inconvenient refill programs, maybe eco products that just are not practical, like paper straws that disintegrate in your drink. How is your brand green hindering, and could AI provide the solution? I mean, at the crux of this trend is really a new sustainability equation. So for years, consumers have been weighing up, cost versus circularity. But that equation now has a new component, convenience. And AI solutions are enabling brands to really optimize all 3 simultaneously. So that circular option can become both convenient and cost effective. Okay, and we're through. Now, I apologize for speaking so rapidly at you, but as you can see, it's a meaty report. We've got so much information in there, so many trends. I've done my best to try and condense those top line insights, but of course, there's plenty more in there. Now, we have a handful of minutes left for some questions. Of course, you saw each of these 7 trends that we expect to see unfurl in the year ahead. I'm going to now reach out to Gemma and ask, have any questions come through, Gemma, that we can just cover in these last few minutes?
Thank you, Robbie. I think the question, well, one of the questions that have come through actually is just to explain a little bit more actually about the Trend Baby, saying why did we create the Trend Baby tools?
Yeah, of course. So we created these Trend Baby tools because we thought it would be incredibly helpful for brands to actually see the direct application of our trends in their specific context. Often, especially when we're delivering presentations or workshops, we might have clients say, okay, this consumer trend is incredibly interesting. I don't quite understand how it would look in my particular context. Why would this sustainability trend be relevant to me, for instance? What the Trend Babies allow you to do instantly and effortlessly is actually see what a potential product, campaign, business scenario might look like in your independent context. And what's really fantastic about the tool is that even if you are a small company, so of course, the example that I used earlier was Tony's Chocolonely, which is a very well-known company, especially in Europe. If you are a small company, you can also insert your company URL, and TrendBaby will visit that webpage and extract as much relevant information as it can and use that to inform the responses. So you do end up with this very highly tailored and well chosen response that really shows exactly the content, the implications of that trend in your very specific context. So that was really the motivation, and obviously we at Trend Watching are really keen to, as I say, act according to the trends that we ourselves are forecasting. So yeah, we've all been very excited about the launch and rollout of those trends, and hopefully you are too.
Thank you, Robbie. Another question is how can these trends fit into non-business sectors?
Yeah, very interesting question. I mean, I think sometimes some of our trends can very clearly directly relate to sectors that are maybe not so consumer facing. So a lot of our trends can or even have been derived from B2B ideas, which we then see filtering through to the consumer level, or even some of our trends will often relate to hiring practices. So maybe not looking at the consumer level, but looking at how a trend might be applied internally. At a business. But I guess in terms of these trends being applied beyond a business level, maybe I would need a little bit more clarification on exactly the context. Of course, we have and you have access to our Ask an Analyst chatbot. And well, I say chatbot, it's actually manned by our in-house analyst team, which is what makes it so fantastic. If you do have questions about the report like that, maybe you're interested to see how one of our trends might relate to a context that's not business specific, you can use our Ask an Analyst service. And as I said, I called it a chatbot, that's completely wrong. But you can simply navigate to Ask an Analyst, type in your question, and one of our analysts will come back to you within 48 hours with a response, drawing insights, trends, innovations, statistics from our platform. So I would actually encourage anybody who wants to see or wants to get some tailored responses that maybe aren't being found through our Trend Baby tools to really use that Ask an Analyst tool to find those specific applications.
Thank you, Robbie, and that's correct. So I'd love to actually hear, so the individual that just submitted that question, please do either drop me an email or submit that to the Ask an Analyst with a little bit more detail, and then we'll be able to kind of dive deep a little bit more. So thank you. I've just shared the link as well for that. Let's see as well. So I think also, Robbie, and for now, it's just time to wrap up the session today, basically.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, if you do have any questions as you're reading through the report, by all means, you have our email addresses here. So please do reach out to either or both of us. And as I said at the start of the call, please do use our trend babies. We're really excited about these. You can get those brand specific applications of the trends that I've presented very simply, very easily. So please do jump to those trend baby tools. Gemma, I think you might have a link to share in the chat. Fantastic. And all that's left to say is thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope that you enjoy the reports.
Thank you, everybody.